thanks for joining me. This week again I'll be using this lovely new die, the Hearts of Happiness set. Again, there's just so much you can do with it, so I'll come back with a completely different card for you this week. I'm using some of Lisa's papers which are available on her website actually. It's not something that we feature all that often, these ones. It's the Stardust and Magic. And it's a really lovely set, so I thought I'd pull them out and use them with this die set and create something with them. I'm making two cards sort of alongside each other really, and you could probably sort of guess how one is made from the other. We have the backing paper on this side which I've die cut into, but then I haven't used the actual die cut hearts on this card, but they were too pretty not to use or just have sitting around on my desk for a little while, so I've made this second card with them. They just make a really nice set of cards, and of course with the lovely patterns of these papers it's such a shame not to use them. So as I say, we'll just recap a little bit. We're using the Hearts of Happiness, but today I won't be using the stamps, I'm just using the dies from this set today, and I have these Stardust and Magic papers, and I'll just quickly flick through them for you. Again, I think you can probably tell straight away that they are Lisa's style. You can see the amazing colours. Look at these, they're just lovely. That's a really nice one as well. You can see the fairies sort of in the background, and of course, as with all Lisa's papers, they are, or the majority of Lisa's papers, they're all double-sided, so you turn them over and you've got lovely woodland scenes in these super sort of navy colours as well, which I really like. A nice moon background, a nice green and blue. So they're really versatile. They're a really lovely set. And so I haven't used them all that much, but making this card today was actually a perfect way to use these. So I will attempt to make these cards alongside each other just to show you and give you another couple of ideas. Though it's a really nice sort of generic card to make, to have sitting in your stash should you need to send a quick birthday card or need to grab a quick birthday card to send somebody. Okay, so the papers I'll be using today, so from this set, I'm actually using this one here, which is a whole multitude of colours on it, so it really lends itself to use any colour in the background actually. You could go with the pinks, the blues, the greens, but I'm using the same shade of pink that I used in this original card. It just worked really well because it sort of works with this pink. So let's put these aside for a second. And as I say, I'll work on trying to create the two cards together, and I'll sort of show you how I got to where I am with it. Let's bring in the card blanks there. So all this takes is one sheet of design paper. These design papers are 6 by 6 in size. So it's a nice square card which really suits my style. I love to make my square cards. And it fits the die from the Hearts of Happiness set really well. So what we need to do is get our card blank. Now, depending on the card blank you use, you could have 6 by 6 card blanks yourself, in which case you possibly don't need to do a huge amount of trimming. It's let's say that's entirely dependent on the card blanks you're using. The card blanks that I use are just short of 6 inches, so more like 15 centimetres squared, so I do need to trim. Now I've got myself a piece of backing card which is this lovely pink with a real lovely pearlescence to it, and it's what I've used in the background cards of the original here as well. It just lifts the card a little bit, and it's a really nice contrast against the matte of the papers. So I've cut my pearlescent paper to be just smaller than the card blank. Card measurements at this stage I don't think are particularly useful, depending on the cards that you're using, you see. Now this works out at 14.5 centimetres square, and that gives me a really tiny border, a white border, which is something that I like the look of. The next thing I would do is to die cut to cut down my design paper to size. Now the way I do this, I don't go technical, I don't measure if I can possibly help it. The way that I would do this is line up the corner, I leave the border as to what I think looks good. So here I just really want a tiny border. So I've got my border on two sides, and I make myself a little mark here, which would allow for a little border on this side, and I do exactly the same on the bottom here. And then I take that to my guillotine and I trim down the side and trim down, and that's how I end up with my design paper, the size of my design paper. I've always worked that way. I used to measure, and I found it didn't always work out, and I'd be trimming and trimming down just to get it right. Then I'd end up with my design paper being too small. Then I'd have to start again, having wasted a bit of paper. So that's the way that I always measure that. So I have my two markers and I just get my size of the design paper. I then would line up my die in the centre of my design paper. So I would centre that completely, and I would take that down so that stays in place, run that through the die cutting machine, and we have our design paper cut. Now you can see at this one I've already trimmed to size, and the background, as you can see, for this card is as simple as that. It really is just the die cut hearts on a piece of beautiful die cut paper, and it really sort of speaks for itself really. It's you don't really need to go any more complicated than that to have beautiful effects. So I'm going to attach this to the background now, and you can see that these design papers are double-sided, so if you wanted to use this for a guy or just wanted to use the blue, to be honest, doesn't have to be as stereotypical as that. You can use the reverse, but I'm going to go with something really bright, and I shall put that down. Now I'll just wipe away that glue. Ideally we wouldn't have dropped that design paper on there like that. So there we are, we have that in itself. I think is just really pretty, really pretty. Now you may be wondering what happened to these hearts. I actually saved the hearts, and I shall come back to these later on. Now I've arranged these like so because I wanted to keep the hearts in the order in which they were die cut. You don't have to do that because we won't be using these hearts on this card. It's just the way that my brain works. I like to have everything in order. But of course, if you have already die cut a lot of these hearts before, you may have some sitting in the envelope as a stash, or you can mix and muddle them up. It's entirely up to you. It's just pleasing to my brain just to have these in order. But that's just one of my little quirks. Okay, so what we can do now, I'll just leave this to one side. That's the process started for this card. Now to begin the second card, I have taken a piece of the pearlescent paper, again, a pearlescent card. I've die cut it slightly smaller this time because I didn't need it as large. So I've gone for just about 14 centimetres square for the pearlescent, and I've mounted this on a piece of grey card so we have a nice border. Now I want to just put this at an angle, jaunty angle on my card blank this time, just for something a little bit different. So what I've done, I lined it up on the card, and then I just cut off the top of the card. This would have been a lot squarer, not by a huge amount. You would have had a slither of white card, probably about this size, sitting on top. But just for something just slightly different, just make it look a little bit different, slight design feature, and just make it a bit more asymmetric. I just sliced the top of the card off so it would actually match the top of this card's. Actually, and if I show you, that is all that I've taken off, just that tiny amount there, but it's enough just to give this card, let's say, a slightly modern, a slightly asymmetric look. So that might be something you might want to try if you're creating a card and you just wanted to do something a little bit different on it, just something a little bit edgy but not go too wild. So now I can just line that up and put that on the front of the card like so. There we are. Now you would have noticed already that I have these white hearts on here. The next stage of the process, I took myself just a piece of white cardstock. It doesn't have to necessarily be your best super smooth white cardstock from Lisa Horton. Just a nice white bright cardstock will do. And I cut this to a square that would match this entire square here. So it matched the, well, it's the same size as the outer grey border here. And then what I've done, I then put this through the die cutting machine, I put the die in there, centred it the best I can. So I didn't actually take into account these little reference hearts on this one, I just took into account the sort of the main bulk of the hearts there. And I centred the hearts and die cut this, and we're left with a stencil. What I then done, I then matched up the stencil to the top of this layer, just take that in place so it's not going anywhere, and then I used this white cardstock as a stencil and paper pieced the white hearts back into the stencil. Now you don't need to attach the stencil down other than with just a little bit of tape, just so it stays in place. You're not gluing that, but what you are doing, you are gluing and paper piecing those white hearts back into position there. Now, you didn't want to see me do the whole of all of the hearts there, 16, so I'll just add these last few in just to show you how that works. Now, the beauty of this is that you get a really lovely grid work of hearts in the background that you haven't had to work out the spacing for, because Lisa's done all that work for us with the die, and therefore we can create the stencils. And so the hearts go back in lovely like that, and then you have the satisfaction of peeling away the stencil there, and you have all those hearts lovely evenly spaced on our second card there. So there we are, we have the basis of our two cards. Now, what we can do, we can bring in all the die cut hearts back from this original card. We can bring this back in here. Now, what I wanted to do, I suppose originally I thought I could take out these die cut hearts and paper piece them in the same way as I did with the white hearts, straight onto the pink background. But I just wanted to just elevate it a little bit, just give it a little bit more dimensions, a little bit more interest. So that's why I've added the white hearts first, and the idea then is to then place and glue into place the coloured hearts on top of the white ones here, and just give a shadow effect. What I'm doing, if you can see, I'm just offsetting them slightly so you get the white heart underneath just peeping through like so, and I think that just gives a really different effect. If I just bring this one in here originally, you can see that the hearts have a white border, and not only does it give a little bit of dimension because you've got the two hearts stacked on top of each other, but it just makes the coloured hearts just pop from the background a little bit more. So if I just show you, if I just line those up initially, you can see, or if I line them up perfectly over the white ones, you can just see the difference in how those white hearts pop. Now, you could actually do it like this, because what having that white heart does underneath, it just raises that and just gives these coloured hearts a bit of dimension. But I mean, it's entirely up to you. You have a play. And actually, by all means, you don't necessarily need to add all the hearts on either. Depending on how you want to do it, you could either have your hearts lined up like that, you could just have 3, you could just have a double row. It's entirely up to you. If you wanted, you could have the shadow from the heart in a different position. You could have the shadow from the top, you could have the shadow to this side, to the right side as opposed to the left that I'm doing there. So that is where you can play, and you'll know what you want to do as soon as you start playing. You'll lean towards a particular style. So all I'm going to do for the time being is just lay these down, because it will take me a little while to glue them. But you just add a little bit of glue the way that I did to the white hearts there, and we just lay those on top. And you can see again how quickly this second card is really coming together. And I think that looks so pretty, and actually I really love the fact that the colour changes across the paper like that. It makes it look so summery. Okay, so there we are. Oh, excuse me. I should have had a drink before I started. Okay, right, the next thing we can do is start thinking about the sentiments that are going onto the card. Now, the sentiments that I've used this time round is the framed sentiments. I have the birthday and the hugs ones. There is another set that says happy and smile, I think it is. So either one would be great to use. Alternatively, any one of Lisa's sentiment sets would work perfectly well with this also. I mean, if you don't have the frame sentiments, don't worry, just sort of go with what you have. Now, I've die cut these in grey because I really like the contrast. It's not as stark as black, but it really sort of stands out bold. Now I'm going to use the same sentiment on both cards, and you would have noticed actually from the original, let me show you, that neither of the sentiments, neither of cards have the framed rectangle around them. So what I wanted to do with this is just show you how you can adapt Lisa's sentiments. I didn't want to keep the frame on there because I thought it detracts too much from all the rest of the hearts, both on this style card and on this style. Now, if that's the look that you like, then obviously go ahead with that. But I just wanted to give you a few more ideas on how you can use these framed sentiments and just adapt them to either suit your project or the way that you like things to look. So don't worry about getting a pair of scissors into the die cut itself. So I've die cut these out of the lovely grey that matches this border. Hopefully you can see this. Let me just create a bit of clear space either side. Okay, so I'll just show you now how we cut into this and just separate the birthday from the frame. Now you can see, I mean, it is actually quite clear where the joins are. And what I would say, just take a tiny pair of scissors and just trim round, follow the shape of the curve that would actually be on the inside, and that's what will give you the really nice shape and take off the little the tags, I suppose it were, that is connecting it to the frame. Now, if you're a little bit unsure with a pair of scissors and going straight in, what would be a good idea to do also is just perhaps draw the line in with a pencil. Now you possibly can't see what I'm doing here because I've got sort of the graphite onto the grey, but what it does, it just gives you that framework, and it just gives you something to follow, so you're not working blind, going straight in with a pair of scissors. Now, at the end of the day, it is only a piece of card, so if you don't get it looking quite right, you can always die cut another one. So, and you won't have, you won't be doing it on camera, so you'll be able to take your time with this. When we come to the edges here, you can always cut down straight, that's entirely up to you, but it's also nice just to give a nice sort of slight curve. Just work that around and just start separating the word from the frame. Once you actually get into it, to be honest, it actually makes an awful lot of sense and you can see where you need to go. There really isn't a huge amount to cut, but what you do need to do is perhaps just get it right. But as I say, if you're not overly confident going straight in with the scissors, draw the little line in that you can see and you can start separating that. And as you can see, once you get going, and once you've done it once, you know, or a couple of times, you get a bit more confident with what you're doing. As with anything, you always get more confident with a bit of practice, don't you? So let's just... I just wanted to show you this, and I wanted to, I thought it was important to show you sort of live the way that this can be done. I always tend to adapt my die cuts, and it's not often that I use them straight in the way that Lisa's designed. So there we are, you can see that we have the birthday there that's now been separated. Now, if you're familiar with the frame sentiments dies, I think a good many of you do have them, you know that you can then cut a second layer for your word to mat and lay onto. Now obviously that comes with a frame also, and what we can do, we can actually attach the word to the frame, and then we just go through exactly the same process and we trim down the border. Now if I just bring in this card, the original card, if you can see that there, the way I've done that initially was to actually attach the two layers together first before separating the word, the birthday word. You can do it that way, but I would actually be happier doing it the way I've just described, doing the two layers separately, because I think that will give you a better border around the outside. Now I can see where there's areas that the silver isn't showing through. Now it's possible that you may not have noticed that, or if you're making the card it's not something that would bother you as such. Again, we all work in different ways and it just depends on the look, I suppose, that you want from the card. So I'm just going to attach that like so. Now if you wanted, actually you could use the sentiment like that. You don't have to have the frame of the birthday, you can just have the birthday with the frame sitting on top of the silver there, and that in itself looks lovely. But I will trim this down. Now, just to get into there, I'm just going to snip and just make that a bit more flexible so my scissors can come into there. Now you can trim the silver, and you actually have the word to guide you round, so you can create yourself just that little border around and follow the word. So in theory the silver layer could actually be easier to cut out than the original. So just follow the words around, go up into the notches that have already been designed there and added as a feature. So hopefully, if I try and keep that tilted this way, you can actually see the way that that's working. Hopefully the reflection of the silver isn't detracting too much. As I discovered when I came to photograph this for you all to see, photographing the silver mirror card isn't always that easy. It looks beautiful obviously in real life and it really does lift a card, but if you get it in the wrong position when you're photographing it, it can actually look quite dull, which can be a little bit disappointing after when you know that it's, say, in real life it looks so stunning. So we can just go up to the top there. And so it really doesn't take that long at all, and I just wanted to show you in real time. It's something you may not have had a go at, but sorry, I'm concentrating here. I don't seem to be able to cut and concentrate at the same time. There we are. So now we have the word done. It really doesn't take that long at all. So let me just move that aside. And we can have that sitting on there. And I think you'll agree now that we've removed the frame and you can actually see more of the hearts underneath. That birthday sits quite nicely on that card now. Now to finish this card off, it really doesn't need much more than just one of Lisa's wordage sentiments from the paper sheets that she does for us. I mean, it's a real quick and easy way, but it enables you to mix and match your sentiments, which is a style that I really enjoy using. And there we are, we have one card finished. I shall glue all that down and photograph it later on, but say that's one really striking card, and I really love these colours. So to finish off this second one here, as I say, I'm using the same sentiment on both. I've already die cut and cut out the birthday this time round. If I put this on here, you'll see it just gets a little bit lost in the background. Even though it's a darker colour, you've got so much going on underneath that this really isn't sort of standing out for itself. So the way I wanted to do that without covering up too much of the pattern underneath was to actually use a piece of vellum. And I've die cut myself a circle of vellum, and for this I've used Lisa's nested and torn edge circles, which work perfectly on vellum. You can see here that it cuts with a super clean edge. But what that does, it just gives us a really subtle central point to be able to mat and layer our words onto. We can still see the lovely papers coming through from underneath, but it now really makes that sentiment pop. And again, all I've done is just to use the worded sheets just to rebuild that sentiment in the centre. And I really like using a mix and match of sentiments. It's something that I've probably done right from the start, from all of Lisa's sentiment sets, whether it be in stamp form or the die cut form. I've always sort of mix and match. I think it gives a real focal point to the cards, especially if you're not using an image as such. I mean, these cards don't have a focal point because you don't have like a die cut flower, or you don't have a stamped and coloured piece on there. Not every card warrants that really, does it? So you need then the sentiment to actually do that job for you and stand out. So I am going to finish this card and glue this down because I want to show you how easy it is then just to glue the vellum. Right, I'm getting glue everywhere today. Okay, excuse my messy fingers. So I just want to show you that we can glue the sentiment onto the vellum. And I've got glue everywhere today. God, dear me. I'm not usually this messy. Okay. Now, we do have to be a little bit careful when we glue the vellum to the card there. So the reason why I've added the word first, because then what I can do, I can just add the little bits of glue behind where the word is stuck onto the vellum. That means I'm hiding the adhesive on the back, so that's not going to show through on the vellum. And it also means I'm just using a tiny amount, because if you use too much too much glue on vellum, it makes it buckle. So we really want to sort of minimise the amount of adhesive we used. So that will be just enough just to catch and allow that vellum to sit and be attached to the front of the card, which then leaves sort of, certain amounts of it free, which gives a little bit of movement actually. And then all I can do is just simply attach the rest of the sentiments to the top of the vellum. And say it really isn't a hugely complicated card, but it is quite nice sometimes just to go go a little bit simpler and make two cards alongside each other using what we would, I suppose you would call the waste or the die cuts from the centre there, which are just too pretty to throw, and you might as well use them on a second card. And if you're using the same sentiment on both, it takes that thought process away from that also. But you've got two completely looking different cards, which could be even given as a set or sold as a set of two if you do craft fairs or anything like that. So I think they're just really effective. So if I bring in the original cards, you can see just how different that looks just by using a different sheet of design paper. Now let me just look at the screen. Let's see if they all fit on. Wait for my camera to catch up. Yeah, there we are. And I think it's also a really lovely way, if you're not necessarily used to using really bright colours, or if bright colours sort of scare you a little bit, to use such a full-on die onto your design papers and take away a lot of the colour, I suppose as it were, and have a contrast through the centre. I think that's a really nice way to actually ease yourself into using colourful design papers. Perhaps even design papers that you can't necessarily match to, or you can't use in a project if you're you love the papers at the time, but once you actually got it sitting in front of you, for some reason you have a complete mental blank or mind blank and you're not quite sure how to use them. Use them in this way. I think it's a really nice way to use up as well if you have a set of design papers which you've had sitting there for a little while. Actually looking at those on the screen, I think that's a really lovely set of cards, and I might actually use the rest of this paper set, which, if I just remind you again, it's Lisa's Stardust and Magic set, which is available on her website at the moment. And it's just really nice to re-look at some of the stash that you have that's been sitting there that you sort of overlook a little bit because you get new things coming all the time and you get excited by it. And say, particularly as a design team, we're always sort of designing for the next release that's coming up. And sometimes it's nice just to go back and just remember why we fell in love with the stash that we bought originally, in the first place. So I think this is a really nice set. If you're looking for something just to jazz up your dies, it might be worth having a look at this set. Let's just look at some of your comments. It looks like we've got through the live without too many internet issues today, which is a relief. They've been plaguing me for the past couple of weeks. So, we've had quite a few people turn up. Oh, hi Heidi, how are you? Happy birthday, Heidi. Hope you're having a lovely day. Connie's with us. Hi Connie, it's lovely to have you here. Glad you can make it. Yes, the papers are striking, aren't they, Connie? There are such a beautiful colours. Lisa's with us as well. Hi Lisa, how are you? And Tina. Oh, no worries Tina. Nice to have you make it with us as well. Natasha's here as well, and Mum. The sentiments are nice, aren't they, Mum? They are. As I say, I really like them, mix and matching with them as well. But any of Lisa's sentiments, whether they be the stamped or the dies sentiments, they'd be lovely to mix and match. And it would be worth just making perhaps just a stash of the backgrounds even, ready to put sentiments onto them as well, which you'd then be able to personalise for the card as and when you need it. But say these backgrounds are so straightforward to use. Oh, hi Elizabeth, you're with us as well. No glitches this week, Mum, you're right, which is quite good. Mum, you get a lot of mental blanks as well. I think sometimes you put so much expectation on yourself when you sit down, and especially if you've got new goodies, and you are excited and you spend a good few hours or perhaps even days thinking about and planning when you actually come to sit down at your desk, that I think it can actually be a little bit overwhelming sometimes, that your mind does go blank. But just start, I think when that happens, always just go back to basics. Just die cut something. Don't put yourself through the expectation of perhaps making a card. Just die something and just see where it takes you. I think this is where this design came from also. Okay, so I think I might leave that with you there this afternoon. I shall get this prepared and put onto the YouTube channel. If you were with me last week and got caught up in the glitches and you wasn't able to rejoin me last week, I have actually edited the video together now, so it's one complete project from start to finish. That is now available on YouTube if you wanted to catch up with that, as are all of the design team videos also. They're all available on YouTube. There's no new announcements at the moment, from what I can think. There's another 2 lives this week. We've got Heidi coming up this week, which I believe she's moved to Thursday from her usual Wednesday time. That's just for this week. And then I believe that Dawn is with us Friday lunchtime, about 1 o'clock also. So look forward to seeing those. I'll love you and leave you for this afternoon. And thanks so much for joining me, everyone. I shall look forward to seeing you next week.